I didn't. Good. I like it. Can we get some Wi-Fi set up? Are you working on that? How do you do it? Well, it's not. It's not on there. It's not on there. It has nothing to do with that. Here we go. This looks like it's got some Wi-Fi.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hold on, it's trying again.
I knew it was real secure.
I'm not able to download the homepage, I don't think.
Come on, looking.
You're on.
Looking. He's on. All right.
You're on. Reboot. When in doubt, reboot.
When in doubt, reboot. Okay, I'm gonna try that myself.
Go back to homepage when you say reboot?
No, shut it off. Are you not on?
Not on. Just trying to reload the homepage, but I'm not getting the file. Oh, did I get it?
Yeah,
Okay.
just a few minutes, I guess.
Okay.
See if you can get to something else. Make sure
All
you
right,
know.
let's see if we can get that. See if it downloads the homepage. Yeah, it looks like it's moving. Yeah, we're good.
You on? You on?
I am good to go.
So smart.
I'm good to go over here. So smart.
So it's not.
Ready to start or you want another?
Yeah, no, I'm ready to go. I can work with this.
Derek, you all set, sir? All right. Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. On tonight's agenda, we're going to review some minutes from the previous meeting. We have invited guests. We have a public hearing from breakfast at Stephanie's, 2 Class 2 hearings, one from Getty, one from Piazzio. The Recreation Commission's here, and we have a presentation by Mass CMRPC tonight. Later on, we're going to have multiple discussion items. We have appointments to various boards. We have to execute 5 contracts. We have some items to for surplus, a road race application, approval of a police detail, and we're going to discuss some marijuana. And then after that, we're going to be entering executive session for 2 issues. It's 6:05. So we got 1 minute till 6:05. Somebody want to for them minutes? August 14th.
All set?
Yep.
All right. I make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from August 28th, 2018.
Second?
2018, is it August 18th?
August 28th.
Oh,
That's
okay,
what
I got
I
the
have
wrong
here.
date, sorry. You can show that as unanimous action. I wrote the
Right.
wrong date down. That was the 14th.
28th, right, Sandra?
Yes.
Get it right off the webpage.
Yes, thank you.
We're just gonna wait 1 second. For the post.
Can you get?
Has been.
At 6:05, we have a public hearing. I'm gonna invite Stephanie Miller forward. She's in front of the board tonight for a request of a common vic license at 3 Farm Street. If anybody's unfamiliar with that address, it's the former Rebecca's relocation, and she's looking to open, I guess, a breakfast joint. So
Yes.
please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Miller, owner of Breakfast at Stephanie's, currently in South Grafton. Can I
Sit down.
should I sit? I
Yeah,
wasn't
sit
sure.
down.
I didn't
Of
know.
course.
Looking, to move to 3 Farm Street, it's the old Rebecca's. I guess that's it. 6 to 2, 7 days a week, breakfast and lunch.
Any questions? Lee?
How long have you been open in South Grafton?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
And
By
you're
the
gonna-
move, go ahead, sorry.
Is that
A
your
quick
question?
follow-up? No, I was just going to say, you're moving the location from there to Upton?
Moving, yes,
Okay.
not adding to moving.
Okay.
To answer your
Yeah,
question,
just curious.
we've outgrown the space.
Great.
So we're kind of busting at the seams, running out of parking, running out of seating,
Yeah.
which is a good problem, but
Yeah.
I've been waiting and looking for the right location,
Yeah.
and it seems like a good fit.
Great. How much seating did you have, and how much will you have in the new
We
place?
have about 30,
Yeah.
so it's small. It's a
Yeah.
good starter. And I actually need to check into the correct seating for Rebecca's, because
Yeah.
I've heard a couple different, I've heard things from people that work there, and I've heard, the
Other
what the
numbers.
landlord thinks it is, but I obviously need to check on the actual amount allowed.
Yeah. Derek, who knows that? What the final numbers are? Is
Usually-
that the fire
I
department?
think it's the
or-
fire department.
Final seating?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what the allowed seating is.
Building official will know that.
Building
It's,
official?
seating capacity.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I'm
So,
gonna seem to think 75, but I was told there were more seats, but 75 works.
Yeah.
75 is more than I have,
great.
so,
Good.
yeah.
Thanks. Let us know if you need any help.
Thank you.
I did talk to the police chief.
Okay.
The biggest issue previously was parking,
Okay,
and especially on Sunday mornings.
I'm
So
sure.
I would reach out to the police chief,
okay,
have him
Some
review
solutions,
your
yeah.
parking plan. That way,
Okay.
prevent any future headaches.
okay, sure.
Anything else?
No?
I have nothing else.
Take a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the, looks like we have a question.
Can abutters have something to say?
Abutters?
Well,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So don't get upset,
No, you're fine.
because I'm about to support you.
Okay, I'm not upset.
You know, and we always want to support, good small businesses in Upton. That's why I'm here. I'm for Russell Ave. There is problem with the parking. There is that fence along the way that blocks Russell Ave, goes from Main Street to Centennial
Okay.
Court.
Introduce himself.
And there is that problem with the fence there. We've had a discussion before. We just have to so I'm here to say, how are we gonna do all this and support the restaurant? In the winter, there's not enough room to swing the trucks. And so I'm gonna reaffirm that Russell Ave is a legitimate street on the 1953 list of approved streets. So we have to be able to make those swings. How you deal with the parking, it's not easy. I'm glad you're coming down. I'm glad there'll be a restaurant there.
Thank
It's a good thing to deal with.
South Street on that.
We just have to find ways of dealing with it. I know a few people in the senior, they'll lose some parking, but we can deal with it.
Okay.
So as an abutter, I'm here to support you.
So can you just introduce yourself for the record?
Okay, Harvey Baylor, B-A-L-E-R.
And you live on?
4 Russell Ave,
Got it.
used to be 1 Russell Court. No debate that if it exists or it doesn't. But we're there, and I think we'll be a great addition.
Thank you.
But we just have to deal with the situation.
Right.
Caving down that little area.
Motion's continued.
And
Okay.
avoid, see if we can all avoid tornadoes and fires.
Yeah.
for a while.
That would be good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else before, go ahead, Mr. McCormick.
Bill McCormick, just a quick question, I don't know if I just didn't hear it, are there hours of operation for the license or not?
6 to 2
Six.
is what she said,
Yeah.
Monday through Sunday. 7 days a week, 6 to
7
2.
6 to 2, I missed that,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Any other questions? Okay. Make a motion that we approve the common vic license for breakfast at Stephanie's contingent upon the following, the building department, Board of Health, and Board of Selectmen. That's a motion.
I second that motion.
That's unanimous action.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
That's all. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Probably said police chief, right? Should be on there.
Let's see. Our next public hearing is for a Class 2 license.
Need to recuse myself?
For Upton Getty Incorporation. Is Sam Yones here? Yes. Sorry if I missed your name. Can you just introduce yourself for us?
My name is Sam Yunus. I'm the owner of Upton BP. We would like to transfer a license to my name. I've been operating this business over 20 years, but due to the things, we don't have to pay fee now to transfer from my brother to my name, so this is the right time we gotta do it. Same everything, only we're changing name.
And I know the town manager was out there earlier today.
We spoke this morning.
So, do you want to tell us what happened before with the previous license?
Well, the owner and I talked this morning and had an opportunity to visit the site, and the site is certainly well maintained, so we appreciate you keeping it clean. At the time, there were 10 vehicles for sale at the property, and what I had explained to the applicant was that back in 2015, the ZBA made a decision to allow for 7 vehicles for sale with an additional 2 vehicles that could be used for repair. And then there was a ruling made, or a vote made in 2016 that just, it kind of muddied the waters and said 10 vehicles that are saleable. So that doesn't really provide clarity. So what I explained, that tonight's vote would be based upon the original ZBA decision of 2015, 7 vehicles for sale, and then the additional vehicles, up to 3 vehicles, would be for repair. And I think we have agreement on that.
Yeah, we don't have any issues.
Okay. Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
No. Most of my questions were based off of that. So, is there any butters or anything? Any comment? Okay. So I make a motion to approve the Class 2 license for the Getty Station at 7 vehicles for sale and 3 vehicles for repair. You show that as majority action. So, thank you, sir.
All set?
Yep.
Thank you much.
Okay. Our next public hearing is for Class 2 ATC sales. Is Gary Filizzello here?
I believe that we asked him not to come to, so that he
Continue
could
that.
continue it until the next meeting.
This open hearing will be continued till further. Get Steve back in here.
All set?
Ready to continue? All right,
Ready to go?
The next agenda item is with the Recreation Commission. Mr. Kazorian and Ed.
So for the record, Richard Porter, 34 William Street.
Rich Kazorian, 5 Briarwood Lane.
Debbie Morelli, 28 Marion Way.
So we invited you guys here tonight to open up a line of communication between the Board of Selectmen and the Recreation Commissions. For a few months now, we've had a lot of questions on like financial stuff, and we've received a few complaints. A lot of people in the community feel you guys have a lot of autonomy and that there's not much oversight.
It's not, excuse me?
Much oversight.
Okay.
So, just for 2 examples, this summer loan is the building of the new gate building and the potential raise to your rec director. So
Okay.
we're just here to discuss some stuff. If you would like to start, Steve, or
Yeah, and actually, following up on that is even something, for instance, the way our budget is presented. As we look at the budget and we look at, of course, we just had our town meeting, we look at that there's no posting for wages. There's no posting for capital. So it has always been my opinion that when you have a budget, as you do, and you're overseeing the department and you have, say, two large expenses coming up, the walkway and the gatehouse, nobody knew anything about the gatehouse. That should be presented at the annual meeting, just as we do with revolving funds or enterprise funds.
Okay.
So that should be shown, and many people ask salary, and none of us have any idea what the salary is. Expenses for concerts, things of that nature. So there's a lot of reporting questions, just from a budgetary standpoint. There's a lot of reporting questions that are not in you know, what we present to the taxpayers and what the taxpayer has an opportunity to vote on. So these are things that we've got to get this clarified. This actually came up a few years ago at annual meeting. I think John Robinson actually brought it up in the fact that, you know, how are these things going to be reported to the people? How are they going to have an opportunity to vote on it? And how are we going to show revenue and expenses?
Okay?
Say something even as simple as swimming lessons. You know, what would the revenue side of that look like? What would the expense side of that look like?
We publish a lot of this information on our annual report, and we have for years. Just want to, in case anybody wants to look at it, that's what we do.
Okay.
Okay? And all the items that are listed there are 3 different accounts we have money in. We go to the town for that money because our revolving fund does not allow us to do things anything to the infrastructure, like replacing the gatehouse, which needed to be replaced. That's easily fixed. We can put that together. In terms of the raise, you were there, you were on the finance committee when the finance committee said that in order for us to have a full-time person, that person's salary had to be paid out of the revolving fund. You remember that? I know you were there.
That is correct, yes.
Right. So since we're paying him out of that, we thought, well, if we're paying him, we're earning all the money for that. And we wanted to give him a 2% raise. I guess mistakenly, we thought we could do that because we're paying for his whole, and his benefits. So that's why we did that. Nobody's trying to hide anything, and anybody who tells you they're trying to hide anything is just trying to get in your brain. It's not what we're doing. And any one of the 3 of you can pick up the phone at any time if you have a question and call me. And I'm frankly a little bit disappointed that hasn't happened. If you have a question, call me.
Is the budget put together by your board, or is the budget put together by the director?
Budget's put together by us.
By the board.
And there's not a lot of, Steve, you've seen the thing, there's not a lot of line items in that whole thing. Not for us anyways. But yes, yeah. When finance committee sends it out, we put it together.
But was the raise given, need a little clarification, was the raise given 2% or 4%?
2%.
2% was the raise.
2% plus an hour additional. So he went from 30 to 31 hours. Probably could have brought him up a little bit more since we lost our admin, and he's kind of covering everything now, doing all the financial stuff too. That and 2%.
But if I just for clarity purposes, are we referring to COLA or an additional 2%?
We're talking, I'm referring to the total raise given.
Oh, yeah, okay, total raise, including COLA?
Yes.
Would have been 4%.
It was a 4% raise.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the clarity.
Yeah, and this is, you know, again, this is a problem where that, in my opinion, that should have either been in the annual report or looking forward, that additional 2%. As we vote on COLA adjustments, you know, any contracts that aren't solved in May get adjusted in November. So that 2%, in my opinion, should show up as a warrant article. Because the people should have the ability to, you know, and that's just my opinion, the people should have the ability to either say yay or nay to that raise. Because again, it's not just COLA, it's COLA plus 2%. So it's 4%, nobody else in town got that raise. I understand it's self-funding, but it's still the people's money. Again, my opinion.
My opinion is that I'm not in favor of putting it on a warrant article. I'm not in favor of putting on a warrant article for anybody, because I don't think that the town should vote like that. That's my opinion.
But that's how it's always done.
Doesn't make it right.
There's a 10%, you know, additional salary item anywhere, just as it was originally posted to the people. So if the people have the ability in the first place to change the wage, why wouldn't they have the ability this time to change the wage? When the hours were changed, you know, 5 years ago, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago. You know, this is what I'm saying, is we've got to be, there's always a clamoring in the community for transparency and accountability. This board is the one that will take the criticism, so you know, we've got to make it right.
Okay?
Just want to make sure that that's done correctly. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I don't think you cut me off.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming, and thanks for your service. Right, I think pretty sure you're all volunteers, right? You volunteer a lot of time for a lot of years helping the town, and that's very good. And we appreciate that. And I think people have to remember that these are all volunteer jobs, and we all hold ourselves to the highest standards, both in terms of behavior, how we govern, what we do, what we offer to people, the services we're trying to bring to town. So I personally don't question any of that, or certainly anyone's motivations for any of this stuff. And that was why I set the time with you, Rich, to sit down and talk through sort of what the history was of everything, learn about RecCom, learn about what you guys do, learn about how you operate, learn about some of the history, some of the programs. There's clearly a lot of good stuff that goes on, and I think we need to recognize that. Since I've been on the board in May, there's been a few different occasions where questions have come up, and we had a conversation here, I think in July, and I know you've heard this and we discussed some of this, right, about having the gatehouse put out to contract without having it go through the procurement officer in the procurement process. I talked with Andrew about that, so I think that's a learning for the organization to say, hey, now we know, anything over, what is it, over 1,000 or over, what's the threshold to go through the procurement officer?
Well, in this case, we would have expected that the Recreation Commission would have sought 3 quotes for the work, given the total project was right around $10,000, and that's kind of the threshold for any type of project of this magnitude. To a large degree, we try to get 3 quotes on all of our work, so $3,000, $4,000 projects. So not just meeting the $10,000 threshold.
Okay, so that the need to go through the procurement process is at $10,000.
To get the 3 quotes, yes, but to sign a contract, there's no one in town that's authorized to sign a contract with a vendor other than the procurement officer.
Okay.
And I think that was probably the first learning piece to all this, was the fact that Andrew had signed a contract, which,
so that was, okay, so that was a learning. We talked about that here in July, but I wanted to bring it up with you directly here.
There have
We
been
talked
other
about that.
contracts since then, and he's gone, everyone's
Perfect.
Derek.
Yep, and that's all we can do, right, is learn from what's gone on in the past. This is obviously all new to me, as I'm sure some of it is new to all of you.
And even with the building, we did get one other quote on that building.
Yeah.
We didn't get 3. It's under $10,000 for the building, but we did get another quote.
Yeah, so that's great. The second thing was the salary increase, which we discussed. I had heard that it was, when you combined it, it was like 2 and 2 and a 3 additional. Was that not accurate, that it was 7% at one point, but then it came down to 4%, or? It doesn't really matter, but I'm just curious.
That's inaccurate. It was never that. It was 2 and 2.
It was always
an hour increase to pick up
so it was always
something.
2% on top of the COLA, which was the standard.
Yep.
Okay. And that now all needs to go through, did we determine that any raises of that nature would need to go through the personnel board, or how did we resolve that, or what was the understanding after that occurred? So what is the process, and what are we going to follow going forward? So next year when this comes up,
There's some dispute, and there's some things that Derek is working on, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with Ms. Emerly. I think there is dispute. I think it's very gray as to how raises are authorized. I think from what I've been told, traditionally, all boards and committees have followed the COLA process for the most part. This is probably unique, and probably, first of all, was a learning process that the Recreation Commission felt it necessary to provide their recreation director something beyond COLA. But when you look at the personnel bylaws, it doesn't really clarify who's the final authority on that. So we're working on a new personnel bylaw for fall town meeting, and that's one thing that Sandy and I and the personnel board have talked about. Who will be the final authority when it comes to raises beyond COLA? And so we're working on that, but we're trying to look at other towns, what they're doing, because the problem that not the problem, but the challenge that we have here in this town is that we have a lot of elected boards and commissions that report directly to the electorate. And those boards and commissions manage their own individuals, and so All the staff under the Board of Selectmen, town manager staff, they follow a very clear process. It's the other elected boards that it's very gray, and so we're trying to get clarity. Who should these boards go to for the checks and balances as when it comes to these types of raises? So, there's certainly work that needs to be done in that sense.
Okay, so there'll be a proposal in the fall town meeting, personnel bylaw revision, that's going to address the lack of clarity around who approves the raises for these elected boards
Right.
and their employees.
Yeah, and I think
Right.
to define it, these are more or less merit increases. Someone has done a good job, has gone above and beyond, and they want to be rewarded by their respective board for that
Yeah.
work. And so the question is, who's going to be the final authority for merit increases?
Okay.
That's the question.
Does that seem reasonable to clarify that?
It needs to be clarified.
Okay,
All in
great.
favor of clarifying it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not in favor of putting warrant articles on anybody, I just don't think that, I think that's a private thing between whoever's managing them and the person, and I don't think that salary stuff should be out there. And I've talked to Derek about this, too. Speaking of, you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to speak to the point of putting one individual, their salary in front of town meeting for action. I think there's a group of people out there that don't think it's appropriate for anyone's salary to be individualized. But in this case, if one individual is going to the special town meeting and you need to raise and appropriate because you gave that person a merit increase, that one individual is going to be called out because that's the warrant article to approve, for the town to vote to approve certain amount of funding for this individual.
Even though the funding comes from us.
Well, that's a revolving account, so again.
Right, well, that's where it comes
The
from.
revolving account is a little bit different because town meeting action is that it authorizes the Recreation Commission to spend up to a certain amount.
Right.
Right, so in this case, you've already received your expenditure approval, so if you
Right.
stayed within the $200,000, you wouldn't have to go to town meeting. If you were to exceed that $200,000
Right.
appropriation or approval, you would have to go back to town meeting, yes.
Right.
But you gotta look at it this way. It's a little bit different. In the case, for instance, in our enterprise funds, those salaries are posted. The people have the ability, in fact, there's a young lady in the attendance here that questioned that, which is, how do I see those wages? Those wages are in, I believe it was Article 3 or 4 of our annual, and it shows capital outlay, I think Dennis presented it, capital outlay, salaries, improvements, debt service, a basic accounting chart of what is going to be spent out of that account. So you have that $200K. If we know that there's a salary that's being paid, that salary has to be shown. If we know that there's going to be capital expense, because it's still the people's money. At the end of the day, it's the people's money. The people have the ability to say no.
Is that the document that lists all the salaries in front of you?
Yes.
Can you see if that's in there?
Which part?
The recreation director.
It is. There's no number.
Oh, they didn't put any number in there? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and again, that's the problem. So if somebody wanted, they could hold the Board of Selectmen's salary. Let's say hypothetically, somebody in the crowd wants to hold that meeting, want to hold the Board of Selectmen's salary.
Which is $500 a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's say that they don't want to pay Selectman Mattelli. They like these other two charming gentlemen. They can
For
hold
obvious
that-
reasons, but.
For obvious reasons. But they can hold that line item, and they can ask for an explanation, and they can give their deliberation. No different than police salaries, whether it's highway department, fire, whatever department it may be, the people have the ability to hold those line items. And here, they don't. They don't know what the salary even is, let alone what's fair raise.
Is there any history? I mean, did we not put it in the book, but it was in the book prior?
I think a few years ago, it was presented as, let's just say the way the Water Enterprise Fund is. It was presented as a 4 or 5 line item, which would show your salary, capital, again, if you had debt service, or if there were insurances or something that you had to buy, it would have that broken down.
So at some point that stopped, is what you're saying?
Yes, I believe at some point, again, however many years ago it was, that stopped.
When the finance committee sends me the document in January, I don't put his salary in there because it doesn't come out of the town budget.
Still has to be reported to the
I
people.
understand, but what's the vehicle for doing that?
Put it in the, when you get that, ask for that information,
Yeah.
you fill that in. And when the budget comes forward, again,
But doesn't,
There's
all
blanks in
those
there.
line items, Steve, don't all they then get figured into what the town budget is gonna be?
well, it's expanded over here on, let's say, page, whatever it is, 5 or 6 or 7. Say like police salaries, it will be one line item, but when you go further pages.
No,
in,
yeah, I know
It'll
that
be
part. What I'm
broken.
saying is I don't wanna count it in for the town when it's paid out of the revolving fund. And I think if I do it the way you wanna do it, it's gonna get accounted towards the town budget. That's what I don't wanna have happen, because it shouldn't.
I don't think in this particular, when you go to the Retcom portion of the budget,
Yeah.
I don't think that part will tabulate forward.
How do you
Yeah, I
do the-
mean-
How do you do the sewer in the other revolving accounts?
That's a separate article. Those are separate enterprise accounts, so they're voted on separately. But I know what Mr. Gazorian is saying, and we could certainly account for anything that we put in that would then be considered a debit that's coming from the revolving accounts. I would also, and I was going to talk about it in my town manager report, that Kelly and I are working on changing how we do the budget process from the old Excel, which I'm now calling the old Excel spreadsheet process, to more of a 21st century budget module that we're working with the company right now on. So we would expect none of these to be any major hurdles to overcome.
No, I'm fine with accounting for it. I just want to use the right
There's a
vehicle.
gentleman from finance in the back, you might be able to clarify.
Rick McGuire, Whitney Lane. I just have a question for Derek, our town manager. When we look at that new proposed personnel policy, will that policy deal with merit increases and the timing of those increases? In other words, let's say if January is the time that all merit increases have to be turned in, will it be stated that there will be a date, whatever date is determined, or can it be random events? Like, let's say in July something transpired, we decide we want to give an individual a merit increase in July. Would that be allowed, or is there, are you going to address the timing?
No, great question, and as I think you already know, it's already addressed in our current personnel bylaws, and I think, I know it'll be restated in the newly proposed bylaws. In this case, I think I know where we're going with this, is that wasn't adhered to, and the belief, I don't want to speak for the commission, was that because it was a revolving account, they didn't have to adhere to that standard. But I think it needs to be very explicit that everyone has to meet that standard.
And that is what happened. When a year went by, when Derek's employment, we weren't ready to give him a raise. We had previously had somebody that did not do a really good job, and I guess we wanted to be really certain before we did something, and that's why we put it in June, figuring we could do it in July, so we made that mistake. The other thing I want to address is this 200,000 thing. I don't want people to think that that's a limit. That's not like someone's handing us $200,000. That's a limit that we can't go over. It's an expense limit that we can't go over. And the last thing I'll say is that kids at play in the last year, our revenue increased 60%, and our costs went up 10%. And 9 of the 10% was due to salary for the kids, primarily, and some for our recreation director. And our enrollment went up 35% on a day-to-day basis, and overall 46%. And we also extended our time. We had several requests over the last few years to have the camp open until school started for parents. So we extended it for another 8 or 9 days. So that some of that, although the numbers weren't terrific, some of that increase, a little small portion of it was due to that. It was also due to us cutting expenses and actually watching what we were doing very carefully, so we don't go over that $200,000. So I just wanted to let you know that, and that's part of the reason why we felt our raise was justified.
and really just to add to that, that's what going out doing the surveys, right? Getting Survey Monkey things back from the public that have attended the Kids at Play program. What do they like, what do they don't like? Making those adjustments, dropping some, we actually dropped some of the weekly fees, which actually drove up enrollment, which actually increased revenue versus decreased it. And, you know, it worked out well, the changes, and, you know, we thought the adjustments that were made, that's part of the reason why we voted for the merit increase for Andrew.
I thought it was very justified.
Yes?
No, I have nothing else.
Any follow-up? or-
Yeah, slightly unrelated topic, so if we're gonna, is it okay if we move on to
I
another?
just got one thing on finance.
Yeah.
Is there any truth, do you get a X amount for every home sold in Rocky Woods Meadow?
That, yeah.
How much is that per home?
Do I get it? No, I.
I meant, does the Recreation Commission get
There's an account for that, yes. Yes. I think it's $3,500 every closing, and I think they're already sold out, so yes, that's true, yes.
And does that account in the 200,000, or is that a separate?
That's a whole separate item.
And how do you spend that money, or is it earmarked for certain items, or?
It's earmarked for recreation for either fields or either buying new, or putting money towards new fields, or for repairing fields, or for whatever we need to do for, like, the walkway. We didn't have enough money to do the walkway, so we took some money out of that account to do that. So yes.
So that's like for basically capital needs, would you say?
Yes.
Fair to
Yep.
say?
Yep.
Like I said, we get a lot of questions about this and we don't have the
Yeah.
answers, so.
And that was thanks to the planning board, did a great job in negotiating with the builder up front to do that, to help us.
So we're gonna forward you a couple of letters, if we haven't already forwarded those letters, Derek, to Mr. Gazorian regarding Recom. Did you forward them already?
I have not.
You haven't, okay, so let's forward those. So we were in receipt of 2 written letters from folks that were at the July 23rd Recom meeting.
Yes.
With various concerns that were expressed, and I wanted to get your perspective on those interactions. And, this obviously makes me a little bit uncomfortable to talk about people's behavior in various meetings, particularly meetings I wasn't at, but given that we got 2 written correspondences with similar concerns expressed about how the conversations were handled, there were some questions around the level of respect during that meeting, the openness and the willingness to hear from the community, to listen, to respond, and to recognize constituents' concerns. So we'll share with you the specific people who sent those letters and the content of those letters. We'll get their permission to do that, but I'm sure it's fine because they're all part of the public record. So, I assume you recall that meeting, and I would love to get your perspective.
Well, what did you address? I mean, you were there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were right here in this room.
Yep.
And I know that questions came up around the gatehouse and the funding of the gatehouse specifically. How the budget was done, why the gatehouse was chosen, and the answer came back. Maybe a short answer came back, but the answer came back stating gatehouse was one of the items that was up for replacement. We knew that we wanted to try to expand that. We wanted to try to bring some power to it, get some security cameras. Oh, sorry. Get the security cameras set up down there so we can see the vehicles coming in and out, being able to have electronic ticketing. That's part of the reason why some of the gatehouse, the gatehouse was chosen as part of the replacement. I don't think we went into that grave detail that night, but we also knew that, that current gatehouse also was not ADA compliant. We had a plan in place and budget in place in order to do that.
Is this new gatehouse ADA compliant?
That is the gatehouse that's currently there now.
Has it been inspected by anybody from ADA commission or anything?
Yeah, I was there for
Yeah.
the inspection that was done with the building inspector as well as Michael Kennedy, who's a representative from, I forget the name of the organization, but he's an advocate.
Center for.
Yeah. So he was there and we walked through and he made some recommendations, which the builder of the gatehouse had made the accommodations the next day, so it is compliant at this point.
And he is the one who designed the plan, who looked at all of Kiwanis Beach.
Yeah.
And told us what we had to do to be up to grade. And one of the things he had pointed out initially was that the gatehouse, you can't have anybody handicapped working in there. And it's not actually in good shape, so we took that as a clue to.
The original.
Huh?
The original
The
gatehouse.
original, not this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Is there electricity and all that ran, or is that a future
There-
event?
It will be added. It wasn't there. It's not there yet, no. And we're getting another quote right now for that. Hopefully we'll have it by Friday of this week.
Right.
So anyway, so he said that, so that's why it all happened.
Yeah, and we didn't get into the electricity part of it, but we did hold off on the electricity because of the slope and the parking spots and the turnaround access point, which is still in works, being led by Dennis on the DPW side. But we tried to hold off on that electrical just in case something else needed to be done, road-wise or pavement-wise or holes or trenches or anything else. So that way we weren't redoing things multiple times.
Yeah, I don't want to lose focus on my original question,
Sorry.
which was around the July 23rd meeting.
Yes.
I think you recall the meeting. Deb, I would love your perspective on what you saw occur, and then I'll sort of share a closing thought. We don't need
Since
to belabor.
I entered the picture in May after the election, so I would say this, there are some hot topics going on right now surrounding Kiwanis. And I think that, emotions get out of control. I've seen it in other committees, and I've seen it worse in other committees. But I just think it just ratcheted up due to the ongoing conflict regarding Kiwanis. So I think all parties just need to ratchet it down a little bit.
And now I'll give you my perspective. The particular individual that I got upset with has complained about Kiwanis Beach now for 3 years. And every time we try to do something to address the concern, this individual has a problem with it. The problem is that she wants handicap accessibility throughout Kiwanis Beach. So, gatehouse was a problem. We built a handicap accessible gatehouse, and now questioning of the cost on that. All right, so there's a point in which we all get frustrated, and I admit I got frustrated that night. That's not a usual thing, but that's exactly why I got frustrated. It's like, how much more do you want from us? We're trying to do everything we can to do this right. Is there anybody here who hasn't got frustrated at one point or another? Well, not you, Gary, but the rest of you? I mean, seriously. And that's exactly what happened. So.
Thank you. But I think I know when that happens to me and I do get frustrated, it's always, I often immediately regret what I just did.
Oh, yeah.
So I think as long as we recognize that it's an unfortunate incident, we all try to do our best in these meetings. They certainly can get heated. They certainly can get frustrating, particularly when there's issues that are ongoing. And there's folks that are, very deeply entrenched in particular issues, and that can be draining. I've seen it happen in other boards and other committees and other meetings I've participated in. So if we can all just do our very best to try to keep it dialed down and to keep the frustration under control. I know it can be a challenge, but I think we owe it to the community to try to do that. One of the things we're trying to do is increase community engagement, get people involved, make people feel comfortable coming to these meetings. Whatever the meetings are, it's not just RecCom, it's every other town meeting. A lot of them are what I would call inapproachable. There's less than a warm feeling when you try to show up to one of these public meetings, and I'm not saying RecCom, I've never tried to go to a RecCom meeting, I'm talking about other committees that I have.
We've invited you.
I know you've invited me, and we had our meeting, so absolutely great about that, but I've experienced it myself in other contexts with other committees where I've walked in and sort of been given the hairy eyeball, like, okay, what's, you know, what are you here for? And I guess I can't stop you from coming in here, which is a little less than welcoming. So I think all of our boards can work on that. We'll certainly be working on it. It's part of why we're changing our meeting time. It's part of why we're inviting more people to these meetings, trying to get more information about when the meetings are, what the agendas are, to get more engagement. So the more we can maintain a collegial discourse, the more we'll be able to have people engaged and participating in the conversation. So that's all I would ask.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Yeah, I was gonna,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
just gonna open it up to the audience. There's a bunch of
Yep.
people with some questions and statements, so.
Go ahead. I just have a couple of
Can you
questions.
just introduce yourself for the?
I'm Meredith Rice, Lane. And what was wrong with the old gatehouse?
Go on.
Why did we have to replace the old?
Yes, so the gatehouse was part, just to give you 10 seconds of context here, because sometimes we don't get the context in these meetings. We just get the topic
Just
that
real
is.
quick, I just want to know
Yeah.
why.
So the gatehouse was part of the transition plan that was released last August. And that included all of the fixes that needed to be made at Kiwanis.
But why, what was the reason that wasn't a part of that? What was wrong with
It wasn't
that?
accessible.
It was not ADA compliant, and
Okay.
it was a mess.
Okay.
So it needed to
And-
be replaced. It's real simple.
Thank you.
And it needed to be replaced anyways. It was falling apart. It was built in the mid-90s.
Just curious. And so the new one now is ADA compliant?
Yes.
Like, what is done to it to make it ADA compliant?
Well, I can tell you that the transition plan, and I'll quote directly from the plan, okay? The following actions must be taken by the town. Construct a ramped, accessible entrance at appropriate running and cross slopes and railings as required.
Okay, so there's a ramp there.
Yes.
Are there railings?
There are currently no railings there.
Well,
Oh, okay.
we've got those ordered.
Right.
Okay, and what is the shed going to serve as purpose? What's going to happen in the shed?
We're do what we normally do, which is collect parking fees. But one of the biggest things that we're in the process of doing is installing, or will be installing, once the electrical is in, video surveillance.
Oh, what?
Video surveillance.
Oh, cameras.
So that a camera, right, so that
Okay.
when every car that drives
Okay.
into Kiwanis,
Yeah.
you'll be able to see the
Is
license
that
plate.
all?
The police will.
Nothing else is going to happen in that gatehouse?
Well, there will be some other things, concessions and,
Oh,
you know,
concessions.
storage, that kind of thing.
Concessions meaning what?
Food,
Okay,
drinks.
so if
But-
you're having food there,
Stop for a second. Food being packages of cookies, pretzels, everything prepackaged, nothing's going to be prepared, none of that.
okay, so people are going to be serving food there.
Not serving food,
Selling.
selling, prepackaged.
Do they need to be able, I don't know this, I'm asking, do they need to be able to wash their hands working in that?
Not when you do prepackaged
Right,
stuff.
everything's packaged.
You know, they're not handling food.
Touching the food.
So
Not
Mrs.
here.
Rice,
Yeah, I'm just concerned that if we spent money on a new shed, I didn't know there was, I call it shed, I'm sorry, I call it a gatehouse, that if we spent money on that, I'm just, me, myself, and I here now. I'm concerned because I thought we already were going to, with money before, have security cameras up.
We-
So, are there security cameras there now at all?
We have
Yes.
some security cameras, but we don't have one right now that can take a picture of all
Okay.
of the license.
All right, and then the other thing was that as far as the gatehouse goes, if it really is accessible to everybody, that's important. But what you're going to be using it for, if it doesn't require washing hands, then my next question is, how can we spend money on that? And if we're going to still think about the 30-car parking lot up at Warren's Beach, why there isn't any toilet facilities up there? That's a concern of mine.
we're here more to, that's more like you should bring these items to one of their meetings. We're not gonna
No,
have a
I'm
lot
not
of
gonna
debate
do that.
back
I
and
just
forth
want
on
to know
this.
if
So,
the money's being spent on the right things. And if I thought there was going to be, really making this gatehouse with water and electricity and hot dogs and hamburgers or something like that, I know that's a lot more money. But I'm wondering, we don't have the money to even get the 30-car parking lot open.
Well,
Why? Why is it taking this long to fix that?
you want to talk about that, you want me?
So,
And yet there's money for the concerts, there's money for the camp, there's money for the...
okay.
It just seems that, I don't know. All right, I'll sit down because I'm just,
And do you have a
the
statement?
priorities, I think, is what I keep thinking.
I'm just not looking for a lot of debate.
No, I'm not up for a lot of
Make a
it.
statement.
I just, Lynn Haggerty, 7 Mill Lane. I just want to speak to the gatehouse is not compliant yet. If everyone's going to be saying that, or if others are going to say that I'm just concerned with the ADA compliance, I'm concerned with more than that. However, the gatehouse is not compliant until the turning radius is done. So therefore, to say it is inaccurate. And I just wanted to correct that statement. And the railings, and so it is not compliant as it states right now. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I'm all set.
So,
You
Do you
sure?
have anything?
huh?
Do you have anything?
I was just gonna make a closing statement,
Okay.
but, these two gentlemen take care of most of my talking and most of my questions, so I really never...
They do that a lot, don't they?
Oh, yeah, it makes my life so much easier. I think, what Mr. Samarelli said is, there's so many hot topics around that place, and everything that you guys do is under a microscope. I'm not sure how you even solve, or even try to smooth things over between you and the citizens. I don't know if you need more of a liaison, or any ideas that we can help you. I mean, do we need to just lay things out better,
Well,
go to them first?
Maybe having a selectman be our liaison would be a way
We
to,
have one.
okay, then,
Just recently appointed as a liaison to the RecCom in our August meeting.
okay, so then we'll include you in our next meeting,
Great.
and that would be a help. That way you'd hear things that are going on and you'd hear it firsthand.
By the way, that's Thursday,
Great.
at Nipmuc, 6:30.
See if I can make it. The good news is I'm very engaged with all people on both sides of this equation, so I spend a lot of time with all the folks involved, so I know about those particular concerns. I follow it very closely. I've met with you. I was there at the inspection of the gatehouse with Michael Kennedy, so I have been very engaged in these even prior to being made the liaison, so I'll try to make the meetings and be there to hear firsthand how things are handled.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invite.
It's disturbing to me because we're talking about the gatehouse and I have information on the gatehouse and what's happened and what the status is currently of the gatehouse, but had no real opportunity to tell you that, the shed is compliant, but there are still issues that need to be addressed. And I don't think we're hiding those issues that need to be addressed. There is the turnaround, there's other things, there's electrical that needs to be added. The shed itself right now is compliant. It has, the ramps, it has, what it needs to have, but there are other things that need to be done to finalize the project.
And the DPW director is working on those. I talked to him before, so he's working on that, as well as the ramp coming down from the upper parking lot that's been, I guess I could say derailed because they can't get the railings. But that's kind of what's holding up the project. But Dennis?
Yep.
Sorry to wake you up. End of October?
So the railings, well, what the catalyst really for slowing down the ramp going up, the process was a response from AAB. I know you were involved in some of this, so correct me if I'm wrong or anything, but we didn't get a response from them right away. We had reached out and asked them to confirm that the plans that CDM had drawn up was compliant with all their rules and regulations. In the 11th hour, Brett and the town manager had a conversation, and I think it was the town manager sent a last plea over there to say, basically, it's been non-responsive, we haven't heard anything. And in the 11th hour, lo and behold, the AAB commented. And they did find a couple of issues that they wanted addressed in CDM's plans. So CDM spent a little bit of time correcting those plans, working with the AEB to confirm that the plans were correct. At that point, we were able to get the contract signed and executed. The railings were back ordered. They were out 6 to 8 weeks. So at this point, the railings are holding up the job. We're anticipating they'll be here mid-October. The contractor is on board. The contract is signed.
Yep.
Or will be signed. I think this evening's the vote for it, right? Okay. And he anticipates about 2 weeks' worth of work to complete it. So he's anticipating a November 1st, or roughly right around their completion.
Okay. Just wanted you to know
Will
this.
soccer season still be rolling in November?
We'll
Is that the end?
have 1 week left.
1 week?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
1 week is on, okay.
Right, November 4th is the last
Okay.
scheduled games at this point.
So it'll be open for spring soccer next year, the beginning anyways.
We've got one more question in the audience.
Just a general comment. Deb mentioned in the meeting that she had the action items and items that are left to be performed and I assume completion dates. She's prepared to give them, but I know that the meeting has to move on. Do we have those published somewhere on the website where you have the open issues, let's say for the shed or wherever else you stand on railings and that? Here's the action item, who's responsible, if it's DPW, if it's you, here's the status, here's the completion date. That way we can start turning down some of this antennas.
Yeah, we do, we
Some
lost.
of it is in our minutes.
Yeah, we lost our admin, but we have a commission member who takes really good notes, and we'll put some of those items up there from now on, but they are,
Thank you, that'd be appreciated.
yeah, they're really good notes up there anyway. You should go and take a look at them.
Yeah. So, just one final thing, we'll wind this section down. Like, since Brett came on board, he's opened my eyes on a lot of things. I think a lot of people know what we're talking about, and you'll see him actually take things and start reading the articles and reading, getting really into all the details. And I think sometimes, even in your realm, if you think, oh, everybody understands, we're all on the same page, we have trouble finding information. So
Yeah.
we just have to, I don't like the word transparency, but we just got to figure out a way to disperse
Even
it better.
acronyms, I think we've gone over acronyms or speaking about board interaction. We just had a situation with the feasibility committee where we made sure to bring somebody from capital budget onto that committee. So sometimes there's a lot of boards in town. I don't a lot of times like to start a new board because sometimes the communication between boards is pretty vague. So
hopefully with Brett getting involved, maybe he can turn down the heat and really explain both sides.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I'm traveling Thursday internationally, so I won't be at Thursday's meeting, but I'll try to make the
Well,
next
there's
one.
one, we have others.
Yeah, we have others. We'll send you the list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, no, you have to ask us. So you have to go through the chair. So.
Michelle Antonelli, South Street. I just want to comment what you said, Brett, about people on both sides. I think we need to make it very clear that we're all on the same side here. We may hold different perspectives on priorities. We may hold different perspectives on what should be done first or how things should be done. But I think we all agree that we want things done right. We want things done to meet the safety requirements of our residents in town. We want things done to meet the accessibility of all people in town. So I think part of dialing down some of the antagonism is recognizing there's not two sides here. We're all on the same side.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
thanks, folks.
Next, we have a presentation from Mass CMRPC about Upton's hazard mitigation plan. I'd like to invite, sorry, I don't have your name, sir.
Adam Menard.
Adam Menard, to discuss a rough draft that he's presented to us. Currently, a link of the rough draft can be found under invited guest session on the link to the BOS agenda on the town website. So, just introduce yourself for us, sir. And
Sorry?
just introduce yourself for us and open, go ahead.
My name is Adam Menard, Associate Planner with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. I'm working with several officials in the town to update your natural hazard mitigation plan. Currently have a draft in place, which I'll present to the board. present to the
Can you
public.
please try to speak up so other people in the room can hear you?
Sure.
Thank you.
So natural hazard mitigation plan. This is a FEMA plan that's required if there's a presidential declared disaster. You need this plan in place to receive grant funding. It's really a required plan. Currently, there was a 2012 plan. It was a regional plan that CMRPC did with 27 other communities. This time around, we're doing it as an individual town basis. So this is a town-specific plan. It's pretty in-depth. It's about 90 pages long, plus there's several maps and an appendix of approximately 50 pages. So it's a pretty in-depth plan. So what is natural, some of the natural hazards? So we're talking the plan about flooding, winter storms, which you're all used to, heavy rainstorms like we had today, extreme temperatures, brush fires, and droughts. So the idea of mitigation is to prevent disasters from happening if at all possible. We're all used to snowstorms, we're all used to street flooding. We want to try to prevent damage from happening wherever possible. Make sure there's proper storm drainage, make sure the roads are kept clear, make sure our buildings are earthquake-proof, even though we don't have earthquakes very often. They do happen on occasion. So according to the Multi-Hazard Mitigation Council, for every dollar spent on mitigation, save approximately $4 in response costs. So in the long run, it does save money to try to mitigate the hazards. So it's designed to break the cycle of disaster and rebuilding. There are 4 tools we used, techniques for hazard mitigation. We identify structure and infrastructure. We develop preparedness and coordination actions. There's education programs, and there's local plans and regulations. I'll just detail some of these for examples. Well, structure and infrastructure projects, this is to prevent floodwaters from reaching properties and roads. And man-made structures to control water flow, such as culverts, dams, pumping facilities. Preparedness and response include the National Flood Insurance Program, evacuation planning, which the MRPC has done a fair amount of, community rating system, which Upton's not a part of. That's a federal program designed to help towns reduce their flood insurance costs. The education and awareness, these can be on your websites, Facebook, mailings, if your schools have any education materials available, for forest fires and that kind of thing. Local plans and regulations, these are your zoning bylaws, subdivision and site plan review, building codes, they're all designed to help reduce the threat of damage in hazards. So the planning process, so I already said we met several times with group members of Upton, including your town manager, fire, police, DPW. We met twice over the summer. We identified critical infrastructure, identified the hazards, we mapped everything. The maps we produced will be online. Encourage you to look at them, they're pretty in-depth. Some of the infrastructure we identified was, well, this building for one, this is an important building for the town to function. The fire station, the police stations, dams in town, the water service was all identified. And we identified several hazards. Those are mainly linked to your waterways. So there's a map here, and I'll see map of earthquakes that have happened in the past 30 years or so. Earthquakes, though rare, they do happen, and it's expected we'll get more of them. Unfortunately, we really haven't had any major disasters. We haven't had a hurricane in a while. We had some pretty bad snowstorms this past winter, but we didn't know how to get those snowstorms for the most part. Tornadoes, they unfortunately happening more frequently. We had one in the summer last month. We need to prepare for them and how to prevent the damage that they can cause. Some of the hazard areas we identified include flooding on Coach Road. flooding on Hartford and Main Street, snow drifting on Maple Ave, wildfires in the state forests. Beavers are a problem in town, and the beaver dams. They're becoming more problematic since they changed regulations a few years ago. Some of the concerns are if there is a major storm that comes through town, what happens if all the beaver dams decide to let go at once? Where's that water going? It's not really designed to flow water correctly, so it could wash out a good chunk of the roadways. Also, invasive species past few years have been on the rise, the gypsy moths and such. Fortunately, you don't have any problem with the Asian longhorn beetle like Worcester and Shrewsbury has, but we need to be aware of that as well because they could move into the area and we don't want that. So observing what's going on around you is important. There was a public survey that was out over the summer. There are 24 responses from the public survey. Survey is still active, and I encourage everybody to, if you haven't already taken it, to take it. It's about 20 questions. Just
How do you take it?
it's on the CMRPC website. It was on the town website at one point, and maybe we can repost that if.
So the CMRPC website, Central Mass Regional Planning Committee website.
Yeah, CMRPC.org.
CMRPC.org, and then we're going to put a link to it on the town website.
There is a link according to this handout.
He said it's no longer there.
Is that link now missing?
Yes.
Okay, so the first illustration you have, page 9?
Yeah, the last page of your handout, there's a link.
Okay.
I'll post a news item tonight before I leave, so anyone that subscribes to news will get an email without me on it.
Thank you, Kelly.
The public input is an important part of the process. It's your town, you know the town, you know where there are problems, you know where snow drifts across the roads during a snowstorm, or after a snowstorm if there's an area that snow builds up, or if there's street flooding in a certain area. I don't know where that is. You have to tell me and I can put it in the plan. I'm from Leicester. I'm not overly familiar with Upton like I am with Leicester. Public input is very valuable to writing the plan. So fortunately, Upton is already doing quite a lot in mitigating these hazards. You have a SEMP plan. You do street sweeping and catch basin cleaning. It's important to keep the stormwater drainage flowing. Your zoning bylaws are pretty good. They make sure if there's a site plan review or if you have a subdivision going in, making sure the drainage isn't being disrupted and make sure you have catch basins in place. Your dams are reviewed by the state. They're inspected. You have a tree trimming program. Hopefully you keep power lines on and power on. And you permit outdoor burning. So hopefully you don't have fires starting in the wrong time of year in dry conditions. We developed with the group that I met with a couple months ago 43 strategies to put in place for the town. I'll just highlight a couple. The plan will be online, and I'll share with Derek. You can post it online.
It's here, we have it.
You have it, great. So some of those draft measures are catch basin cleaning, clean once a year or more often as needed. Maintain the beaver monitoring and trapping program. Monitor Wildwood Dam and repair if it's needed. Maintain the SAFE program, which enables students to recognize the dangers of fire, and specifically the fire hazards tobacco products pose. Become mass municipal vulnerability preparedness community. That's a state program that's pretty new. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called the MVP program. It's similar program as to the hazard mitigation, except that instead of the hazard mitigation looks backwards the last 5 years, MVP looks forward at what the impacts of climate change could pose in the community. There's grant money available with the MVP program, and it gives you points on other grant programs. That's a
I'm sorry, are you saying MVP program?
municipal vulnerability preparedness. It's a new state program, and I've taken part in a couple of the programs, and it's quite interesting. It's worth looking into, in my opinion. Work with CMRPC and the Central Region Homeland Security Advisory Council to further develop evacuation planning. There's been 4 phases of evacuation planning. Might be doing another one in the future. So possibility is another action you can take. None of these strategies are required to be carried out. It's one of the, what you could call loopholes of the program. You have to have the plan in place, but you don't have to actually follow any of the strategies. So they're really guidance, and the planning process to carry over the next few years is good guidelines, really. So, after today's meeting, there's a posting the plan on the website. There's a required FEMA requirement to post the plan for at least 2 weeks.
Plan's been on our website since June.
Right.
Just so you know.
Okay.
For the community, it's out there on the website, Upton Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's a 91-page document. Don't read it. There's a lot of gobbledygook in there, but there's some pages that are specific to Upton in terms of what he just referenced, the specific opportunities we have for mitigation, for priorities. They're prioritized. There's 26 high priorities, high impact items, so that's a lot. You guys should sort of stack rank it a little more so we can focus, but I think with Derek's help, maybe we can pluck off a few of those, and working with our emergency management director, try to create a prioritization of those 26 high priority, high impact items. But it is all on the website for folks that are interested.
Great.
All right, go ahead.
So in a few weeks, I'm going to check with the town officials who have helped me write this plan, make sure it's good with them before it goes off to MEMA. MEMA has to review this plan, and then if it's good with MEMA, FEMA has to review the plan. And if it's good with FEMA, I have to get to come back here in front of you three and ask for you to formally adopt the plan. So it's a bit of a lengthy process. You have to check all the boxes in order to get the plan in place, but it should be in pretty good shape with it. And then you'll have your plan for 5 years. You don't have to see me again. So do you have any questions for me?
I was surprised to find out we had 10 dams. I saw that when I was reading through the larger format here. The question I did have, there's quite a bit in here regarding flooding. Is it because of the rivers in town and the waterways and the ponds? Is that why it seems like it just appears to me like there's a lot of dialogue about flooding?
Yeah, flooding is generally the more common hazard in most towns, and yes, exactly. The rivers, the wetlands, I think Upton is part of the Blackstone River Basin, and the Blackstone River Basin is the highest dammed area in the world. So there's a lot of risks with flooding. A lot of the infrastructure is built right next to the rivers, right next to the wetlands, because that's how they power the mills. So the towns kind of grow up right around the center of the water. So that's why it puts them at a higher risk, and the drainage isn't always there. They didn't have good drainage 100 years ago like we do with new development, which is a higher risk.
Yeah, I don't want to steal the DPW director's thunder, but we do a great job of catch basin cleaning, stormwater drain cleaning, and street sweeping that helps. It's part of the reason we didn't have a lot of flooding problems today. In addition to that, there's work being done to help address the beaver population and some of the dams that are being created. So while we all love the beavers, they've been here a lot longer than we have. Sometimes they do create a problem for houses and structures and all that. So the DPW director is working with the Conservation Commission as well as with the Board of Health to identify problem areas and remove dams and or trap the beaver as necessary to protect people and property.
Yeah.
So good work up there.
Anything else?
If we could just get your contact information, that would be all.
So,
I don't have anything else.
I quickly went through the plan. It's very well written. I also was surprised about the amount of dams, and I also see that even learned where a dam was, the Grist Mill Dam. I didn't even know that existed. But it's interesting to see that, how you wrote that, and then there's also seeping there. So to go back what you said about severity and prioritize, it also helps us. We're actually have a finance meeting tomorrow. Maybe we have to start looking at ways to budget for repairs. But I did notice on page 46, it talks about I-290, 190, and Route 9 coming through Upton. So there's a little...
Your typo there?
Yeah, a little
That's why
copy-paste mistake.
That's why it's a draft.
But other than that, I mean, that's the only thing I saw quickly.
All right.
But, thank you, sir.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Great job.
Thanks.
And thanks to all the people in town you work with.
Do you have any recognition for tonight?
I do not.
Do you, Derek? Sorry, Brett, do you have any recognition for tonight?
No.
Derek, we're ready for your town manager report if you have one.
Well, I'm just going to mention just two items because I think they're both important. And one I started to talk a little bit about. Kelly and I have been working with a company called Veda, who is really our budget management system. It's how we monitor our expenses and our revenues. And the town has been paying for some years now for this program. And so through some research and some exploration, we found that they have a module for building budget. So we have a $25 million budget, right? We've been talking about this, at least for the time that I've been here, that we build a $25 million enterprise with an Excel spreadsheet. And so that is concerning because it doesn't, we rely on these links to ensure that we're populating the sums and so on and so forth. So we hope to move to the 21st century this fall. We're going to be meeting with Veda. Things look very optimistic that we're going to move towards this budget module, so that we think that it's not only going to, it's going to certainly create efficiencies with our staff as they enter the data. It's going to create efficiencies of how we monitor our expenditures, and most importantly, hopefully that it'll help prevent any errors that could take place during the budget building process. So I'm looking forward to that. I think and many else are as well. The other issue has received a lot of attention, certainly in the newspaper over the past 6 weeks and beyond, starting in the early part of the summer, is 104 Westboro Road. So as you know, 104 Westboro Road has received a lot of attention because of their sign building process, and we are still continuing to move that property through the court process. Most recently, we went to court, and the judge ruled that the property owner must comply with all of the violations that will be written once again by our building inspector. And at this time, they assigned a housing specialist who will mediate that process. So one of our building inspector, Steve, he attended 104 Westboro Road with the housing specialist on Friday with the property owner. They came up with a list of items that need to be corrected forthwith. And so the three parties will be attending housing court once again on Monday to try to bring this property finally into a resolution of compliance. So it's been a long road, and I know we have received a lot of phone calls and a lot of complaints from people in the community who think we're not doing anything, but it's going through the court process, and I think we've gone to half a dozen court hearings already to try to bring resolution to this. So we think we're nearing towards an end, but that remains to be seen. So I will end there.
No, just thanks for all the time you've spent dogging that one. The only way we can try to address these properties is by following through and putting some teeth in the process. So nobody likes to have to go through it, but it's good that we're doing it. Just a quick question, if I may. Did we do any research on the voting controllers for town meeting? I know we had talked about that a couple of different times. I don't know where that stands or whether we were planning on doing that for the fall meeting or not.
No new research other than I had reached out to Grafton.
Yeah.
They do this process, and they'd be willing to work on an agreement with the town. They'd be willing to come in and help train town officials, and then we would rent that equipment for them.
Yeah.
Haven't heard back from the moderator since our last meeting, but certainly can follow up to see if he wants us to move forward with that.
We definitely want to move forward with it.
Okay.
Or I do. I can't speak for the rest of the board.
I mean, we have to, it's really the moderator's meeting, so we have
Yeah.
to really have him. So, I mean, we can highly suggest, but.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. Let's highly
I
suggest
think
it.
it'd be a good idea to
But
get
we
an
also need a
idea.
price figure too before we jump to any conclusions.
That's exactly what I was
What
saying.
It might not be budgeted.
Did Grafton say what the?
They didn't give me a figure.
They didn't?
But if the direction from the board is that the board would like to see this at town meeting, I'm more than happy to continue conversations with the moderator to see if he's still interested in that, and then we can, work up a proposal from Grafton.
Yeah. I mean, I have to defer to my colleagues here. I mean, I know from my perspective, I think it's worth investigating. It's worth getting a price, and it's worth understanding what the process would be to do it, and then we can have an opinion about it. but until we know whether it's gonna cost $1,000 or $2,000 or $80,000, then it's hard to form an opinion about it. I think I've talked to a lot of people in town, and as we talk about it more, I'm hearing from more and more people that don't go to town meeting because they don't want to have their votes in front of their neighbors about particular issues, and they don't want that to be public information. So for me, it would increase engagement in the town. It would encourage people to come out to town meetings. So, you know, obviously we wouldn't make any decision or recommendation without knowing the cost and without knowing the process or impact on personnel or process for the meeting. But I think all of those, I don't see any reason why we can't figure those things out and then make a recommendation, if not for the fall, then possibly for the spring. So that, but I defer to you guys too. I mean, I'm just one.
I definitely agree we have to investigate. I just don't want to jump to any conclusions or say we're going to do this without having a dollar figure and stuff.
Yeah, I think at our last meeting, I think the estimate was 40 to 80,000 for the equipment plus
But
whatever.
crazy.
But we've
It's
heard
not that much.
7,000 too. We've heard 7 to 80,000.
Right,
So we
so-
got to have a number.
Yeah,
we
and
gotta-
we heard 9,000, so let's just get the number and then we can make an assessment.
then-
But I agree with both of you, until we have a number,
We also
there's
have
no
to reach out to
opinion.
the schools to make sure we have the IT system or whatever can support that. Is that an independent?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, to me, after that meeting was open-ended, I didn't get any direction as to how we were moving forward, so
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to
that's what I'm
talk to
trying do is
Grafton,
I'm
more than
trying to
happy.
close the end so that
Sure.
we have some follow-through.
I'm more than happy to talk to Grafton and talk to the moderator and come back to the board at either on, if not our next meeting, or the meeting after that with a proposal.
Sounds good.
Great, okay. Is that reasonable?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because there's also the, you know, the monitoring of the professional fee that's associated with it. We got to figure out what that would be.
Yeah, sort of a total, yeah, we'd want to know the total cost. Obviously, we have to work with the town moderator and make sure he's comfortable, but he seemed to be very open to it and said he would support it. Had some concerns, had some reservations, but also thought it could help a lot as well. So I think we're all on the same page with that, but clearly the cost is the big thing.
Right.
Because even if we can't do it this year, we can always figure it into next year's budget.
It's possible, yeah.
Right.
Thanks, sorry, thanks.
Thanks, Derek. Agenda item 6.1. We've received 2 applicants for Capital Budget Committee, Ken Gowacki and Frank Alanello. Neither one of them are here tonight, so there's only one opening. So, you want to make a motion?
Neither one of them really said anything on their application.
I know Ken's been on it for 10 years, he's looking for renewal. He does all the speaking on the capital committee's behalf at town meetings.
So, right, Ken normally would have been, we would have just renewed his,
Yes, so-
his appointment.
Right, so what's the breakdown again? So this is the committee that went from 7 to 5 members at the Springtown meeting.
6 to 5.
From 6 to 5 at the Springtown meeting. We've had, was it staffed with 6 at the time?
That's right.
Okay, so who was it that came off
Both of these.
since the Springtown meeting?
Yeah, actually, both of these.
Both of these guys were on it, that's right.
So one individual expired last summer, so 2017,
Yeah,
and the second individual expired June 30th, 2018.
okay, who expired June 30th?
June 30th, I...
Do we know?
I could tell. It was Ken?
So Ken expired June 30th, this past June 30th,
And Frank expired, his appointment expired on 2017.
and his appointment expired 2017. So are either one of them on the capital budget committee right now?
No, because
No, the appointments have expired.
Both appointments expired.
Okay, so who's on it? How many people are on it now? 4?
4.
Okay, and those appointments expire, do we know when? Like, do they come up every year? I'm just trying to figure out how,
It's staggered.
right, if there's 2 people that are interested, I'm trying to figure out the next opportunity that they would have to get appointed, so.
Well,
if
this
I-
board now holds 3 appointments. We
Yeah.
held no appointments prior to the annual
Yeah.
town meeting, so we
Right.
now hold 3.
So
So
we
I'm
hold
not sure
3.
the,
We'll have to go get the spreadsheet. Can we give us...
pull up the spreadsheet.
Oh, you're going to pull it
I
up?
can confirm this.
Just because that will tell us, right, if we've got 3 appointments, and obviously we can only appoint Mr. Glowicki or Mr. Iannello tonight, but I'm just wondering when the next opportunity would be for us to potentially appoint one of them, given that they've both been longstanding participants. I don't know who the other members are, so we'd have to figure that out.
One of the members is Dan Lazar.
Myself and Dan.
Dan,
You, Dan, yeah,
Just from the finance committee appointed in May.
yeah,
And Dan Lazar was appointed, I think, in February or April of this past year.
And Dan holds a BOS appointment?
No.
Yeah, Dan's
No,
the
that-
BOS,
Well,
yeah.
Dan
And-
holds the finance committee, because he was appointed by the finance committee before it was turned over to the BOS.
We gotta get the spreadsheet.
So, we just table
Well,
this?
that's all right, we don't have, I just,
You want to just table this to next meeting?
yeah, that would
We
be
have all
great.
the-
Maybe we should do that, we can get the information rather than doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
just table this to
The
next
committee,
meeting.
the committee can still function,
Yeah.
presumably, so,
Yes.
okay.
Mhm.
So let's get some.
Well, I guess the
information.
question, do they have a meeting between now and then?
Well, we
No,
can also
no,
invite
no.
them both to the next meeting, have them, whoever gives us the better speech will get it, so.
There you go.
I mean, we've made everybody else introduce themselves, so.
We have.
Okay.
So
You want to
have
table
people
it?
Show interest. Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Just gonna table that.
Sorry I didn't prepare you guys for that, Derek, I didn't think of it until we were sitting here.
No, those are good questions, Rose.
So now we have, multiple contracts to execute. Let's see, where did I put them? Okay. Did you guys get a chance to read the contracts today?
I did.
I only read 2 of them.
There you go. The first contract is for the Kiwanis Beach ramp. Is there any questions or debate on this? Would like to say something, or did you already say it earlier?
I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have sort of general questions about, so I know you had mentioned the railing being delayed and coming in, thank you, coming in October, trying to have this done by November
1st.
November 1st.
That's our goal.
Okay, that's the goal, so that's
Just for the people who don't know, this is Dennis Westgate, the DPW director.
good call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that was the main thing. Are there any other significant grading issues or sheet flow issues or any other sort of significant work that's got to be done up there, or is it pretty straightforward?
It's pretty straightforward. And the contractor is very familiar with, it's the contractor that won the bid award is the same contractor that did the majority of the work up there in the upper parking lot.
Yeah,
So he's local,
yeah,
he's familiar with the site,
okay.
and doesn't feel it's pretty straightforward. The hardest part was obtaining the railings. They ended up being a backorder item.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the way the ramp is constructed and designed, the railings have to go in as the work is being done. So it's futile for him to start excavation without the railings.
Yeah. Is there, obviously there's a lot of eyes on this one. We got it wrong the first time. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. But we just need to make sure we get it right this time. So who's there sort of doing the on-site supervision to make sure that it gets built according to the plan?
Right, so the best news is we have a nod from the Architectural Access Board that has reviewed the design by CDM
Yeah.
and declared that it is correct.
Exactly.
And
Step
then
one.
CDM is our engineer, the designer engineer, and they will be out during, it's only about a 2-week construction phase.
Yeah.
So they'll be out several times during each week just to confirm that everything is being done to specifications
Okay.
and confirm that at the very end.
So who does that? What's that?
CDM,
CDM, what's their person's name? Do you know that's going to be out there?
Chuck Aldersberger.
Chuck Aldersberg? Okay, great.
Do you have a price figure for this project?
Was $60,000.
$1,000, okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to Mr. Westgate's comments that prior to construction, the contractor has to pull a building permit with our building commissioner. Our building commissioner by statute is our ADA compliance officer, so he will also be up there as well, ensuring that it meets all the slopes.
And has the building permit been submitted and pulled and all that?
Not to my knowledge.
Not until right before the construction begins.
Can you just ensure that that all happens?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Sir?
No, thank you,
Any,
Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
I have no other questions, no.
I'll take a motion from.
I guess, you know what, I take that back.
Hold
Do
on,
you
Mr.
want to
Wexler.
maybe, quick, sorry about that.
That's okay.
There's been some question over the last couple of meetings regarding the asphalt paving.
Yes.
So, I don't know if we should maybe put that list up, or do you want to just quickly tell us what roads are scheduled to?
Are you making a
That's a
motion
different
for all these
that's
at
a
one
different
time?
contract.
Well, I was going to say, do you want to do them all at once? I'm thinking we do them all at once.
Recreation, that's a master plan.
I think
CDM
we
Smith
wanna
is sewer.
cut around the rec master plan one a little bit.
Probably do,
Do them separate, because I don't want
You
to
have
lose track
questions,
of
yeah, okay.
conversations. Yeah, I have questions.
that's fine. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Do you want to make a motion on that?
You can go.
All right. Make a motion that we authorize the contract regarding the Kiwanis Beach ramp.
I second that motion.
That's unanimous action by the board. Okay, the next one is the recreation master plan. What is that? Derek, would you like to speak a little bit about the master plan and how it was approved and stuff?
Yeah, so the Recreation Commission, I worked with the Recreation Commission to help them develop an RFP. And then they went ahead and received multiple responses to the RFP to develop a recreation master plan. They went through their comparative analysis, and they chose, I think it was BSC Corps?
Yes, sir.
As the winning bidder to this plan at a cost of $35,000.
And this was approved at town meeting. This was voted on.
The expenditure.
The
That's
expenditure,
right.
so.
That's right.
We're just executing the contract that was approved. So, any questions, sir?
What was the impact of the change to the Trask property? Because that was, I would think, originally going to be a significant focus of the master planning process for RecCom. Is that still going to be considered, or are they going to leave that off the table for now?
Ms. Amarelli, can you answer? Repeat that.
I don't know, if Derek, do you know?
Well, I don't think the fact that just so folks are aware that, as you all know, the Trask, Mr. Harvey Trask left approximately 28 acres of land over on Mendon Street to the town for recreation purposes and/or education purposes, and so we will move forward. That donation was accepted at town meeting in the spring. We will move forward. We will move forward to accept that, through probate, and we were notified less than a month ago that the town that's being put on hold because there is a wrongful death lawsuit that has been filed against the Harvey Trask estate. So because of that, the transfer of ownership is going to be delayed. I don't think that is going to alter the analysis of the master plan. I think that it would probably make good sense to continue on that same course, assuming that at some point in the future this litigation will be resolved and the town will still receive that land.
Yeah. Is that the RecCom's opinion?
Yeah, that's exactly what we discussed at our last meeting, which was just last week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's it, thanks.
Any questions?
Nope, that makes good sense.
Yep. Take a motion?
You want to take it?
Sure. This is my rare opportunity to make a motion. I make a motion that we approve the contract to engage with BSC Group to develop the Town of Upton, Massachusetts Recreation Master Plan.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous action. Okay. I think we could do the next two together. It's both wastewater collection systems. So, Mr. Westgate again?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what you have before you is two task orders associated with one contract with CDM. CDM has been contracted in past years by the town to implement an I&I program, an inflow and infiltration investigation. This is a Mass DEP mandate of all sewer authorities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We are required to do it. Basically, we are investigating our sewer infrastructure to determine any areas where we have inflow and infiltration that overwhelms our plant. You've heard me before come before this board and talk about this in greater detail. So during the last annual town meeting, a part of our capital plan was the $113,000 to conduct the remaining portions of the I&I program. They have broken it up into two separate task orders, and that's what you have before you tonight. Money has been appropriated, town has already authorized it. Tell me.
Any questions?
When will it start, and what's the oversight process?
It has already begun officially because it started a couple of years ago.
Got it. So
The
these
town
are
has been
additional
putting-
tasks
right.
in that.
So this is the final task orders associated with putting in the meters in certain areas to do flow assessments during peak storms,
Yeah.
things of that nature. And we're hope to complete it before January 1st.
How much does it usually cost to fix infiltration problems?
It's hard to say. It depends on how severe the situation is. I know of a couple of areas for certain that we have, alongside some brooks where we have infrastructure that has been compromised, probably RCP pipe, reinforced concrete pipe that was parged, and the pargings have eroded over time, so when the water table comes up and the brooks flow heavy, that water is infiltrating and going directly to the plant and overwhelming the plant. One of them is on our capital improvement for this year on Brooks, is it Brook Street? I can't recall exactly which one it is, but there'll be several, I would imagine there'll be more of those type of situations and others.
Can I ask a related question? So let me know if you want me to stop. The impact of, so there's a developer that's looking to do a development in town up off of 140. They're looking to bring town sewer and water up through that in the back of Grove Street up along the railroad tracks. And is there any research, and Derek, you might know the answer to this around, I'm just thinking as we think about infiltration and you've got a rumbling train, is there any greater risk to sewer water lines that are along a train track, or are there special designs to accommodate for that vibration, or is that not really a thing?
No, because they're doing one right now too. They're putting one under Hartford Ave South.
So I can answer that question. Exactly, and then that consideration is in the design. So for instance, Pulte Homes, the development that is going up at the top of Hartford Ave South, part of their crossing for their wastewater goes underneath the railroad tracks. And we had to receive authorization from the railroad company and actually insert a sleeve. So the sleeve is already inserted underneath the tracks. The pipe will go in it and they'll blow sand around the sleeve, and that insulates the pipe from vibration and such. And that's through design.
Got it. And what if it runs alongside something similar? They would just incorporate
We would have to
whatever
do
the
something
impact
along
is.
that line, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So they would assess it. The engineers would say this
Absolutely.
is what you need to do to mitigate the risk. And okay, thanks. Sorry.
Any questions, sir?
Side note.
I have none.
Go ahead for a motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to execute the contract between the town of Upton and CDM Smith for task orders 1802 and 1803.
Second.
That's unanimous action by the board.
Thank you.
The last
Thank
one
you.
is the paving contract, and I had that somewhere and I can't find it. So either go ahead and.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So, I was unaware when I first came here that we had the particulars of our paving contract. Our past contract was designed and targeted for specific roads. It wasn't a town-wide, per se, paving contract like I put together for this year. And it had expired based on the fact that the roads had been completed. So I scrambled to try to put together and fully execute a town-wide paving program, which incorporates, it gives the town the ability to enter into a contract with a successful bidder, the lowest bid responsible and responsive bidder, to be able to do a total of $1 million worth of contracting in a given year. And that figure comes from our Chapter 90 appropriation of $313,000, our annual town appropriation of $530,000, and we have a remaining balance of roughly $139,000 from previous year's appropriation for town-wide paving. So we put together a town-wide road reclamation, paving, and related construction project, which basically soup to nuts covers everything from sidewalks to gutter repairs to guardrail. Anything that we need to have done out there, we can basically get done through one blanket contract. I also added 2 extension. By statute, we're allowed to go up to 3 years. So I added 2 one-year extensions. It's at the sole discretion of the town. So if we get a favorable bid, which we did get a very good bid, and the contractor is an excellent contractor, we have the luxury of continuing that contract for 2 subsequent years, one at a time. Or if we find that we have problems with the contractor, we can always rebid it at the end of the first year. So it puts us in the driver's seat. And that's the contract that you have before you. The successful bidder was Hershaw Bevilacqua, excuse me. This is a contractor that is familiar with Upton. Upton has had their services before. They have been a successful bidder. They are a local contractor. So I have high hopes that we're going to get a lot of paving done, and the residents are going to be very pleased. You have also before you a list of target streets that we have. This list is comprised of streets that we began working on last year, and they have the base coats down. They need to have the top coats put on. So this low-hanging fruit will be our first goal, to go out and pave these roads. And then based on our pavement management program, which gives a rating, a road rating to all of our streets, and the current projects that we have going on, in other words, if we're moving AC pipe from a particular road or the gas company's working on it, all that collectively comes into play when we put together our paving list or anticipated paving list over the next year. The street you have before you comes to roughly $1 million worth of work.
Are we able, I've never looked for the pavement management link or anything. Is that on the website or anything?
People want to know the streets. What, do you want to just tell us what the streets are real quick? It only
Sure.
looks like there's 15 of them.
So,
The caveat.
Oh, with a caveat. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
that's okay.
Derek's like, you wanted to do what?
So the streets that we've identified because of the 3 reasons that I brought before you tonight is Westboro Road, East Street from Walnut to Fisk, Brook Street, this is part 2 of the paving from Piccadilly to the end. We've already done the first part of it. Brook Street from 140 to Piccadilly, Piccadilly Road itself, East Street extension from Pond to roughly number 167, and that is because we've already paved up to 167, so that is finishing the rest of that road. Walker Drive, Warren Street, Church Street, Russell Ave, and I think there was a gentleman here earlier from Russell,
Yes.
So he'll be pleased.
He will. We've been
It is
asking
the
for that.
it is the second to lowest rated street for pavement ratings in our pavement management. I don't even want to tell you what the number is, it's that low. South Street, this is phase 2 from Mending to Farah. South Street from Oak to Chestnut. Kiwanis Beach Road, which is now ours. Pearl Street, Glen Ave, and Pease Road. And that is our current list.
Wonderful. Thank you. What's the caveat?
Well, I just wanted, because we read those, and there are some folks at home are probably really excited that they made the list, but things can change. We're gonna be facing a winter before we get this done, and we could have some deterioration of some roads because of harsh winter, so that is the list that we're gonna start with, but again, things could change because of weather conditions. Kiwanis Beach Road may have to change, given that it's kind of narrow one section, so those are things that we'll certainly talk about as we proceed with this $1 million plan for FY19.
Phenomenal. Great.
Roughly, how many road miles would that be, Dennis?
I'm sorry, I don't have that with me tonight. I can provide that to the all of you and give you an idea of how many. It's quite a bit.
Yeah, sounds.
It's substantial.
Sounds good.
More than a mile.
All right.
Take a motion?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to execute the contract between the town of Upton and Harshaw Bellavacqua paving in that amount of $1 million.
I second that.
It's unanimous action by the board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Westgate.
Thank you, Dennis.
Good luck.
Our next item is 6.3. We have multiple items that have been presented to us for surplus. A link to these items can be found under 6.3 surplus item section on the link of which our meeting is. If we approve these items, we'll have this more easily accessible. So, any questions about the equipment?
I have none.
Just for everybody's knowledge, it's mostly electronics. It's video cameras, and it looks like some AV type stuff.
Yeah, mixing boards and things of that nature.
No, the only thing I don't see is a dollar price to this. I'm not sure where the dollar price comes
We'll be
into.
working on that as we put it on the auction.
And are we going to use an auction company again, Kim?
Yeah, we'll probably use the same one that we used the last time.
Okay. You're up.
You mean? All right, what do we want to do?
Just motion to approve them items
As surplus?
Surplus, yes.
All right, so I make a motion to declare the items listed in section 6.3 of the Board of Selectmen agenda as surplus items available for auction.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous action by the board. Okay. 6.4, road race applications. In our package, you will find a 5K road race application from VFW Post 5594 for October 6th at 9 a.m. Is everything in order?
Public safety has fire, police, and DPW have all signed off.
Any questions, Brad or Steve?
For some reason on the map it says Walpole, Mass. I'm not sure why that is. I think it's just typographical.
I
But,
think probably a copy paste on their part.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Because it does have our streets though.
It does,
Yeah.
yeah, which is strange, but, yeah, other than that, I have no questions.
You guys wanna make a motion?
Okay. Make a motion that we approve the proposed road race for the VFW post.
Second that?
And I'm going to abstain because I am a member of the post, so that's majority action. So, is Mr. Campbell here tonight? Nope. Okay, 6.5 is to approve some funding for a police detail for the haunted trail event. Mr. Campbell is usually here, and he has requested to hold a haunted trail again this year, beginning at the Road Guard and proceeding to the Heritage Park. The Historical Commission will review the application at their next meeting and endorse the use of the park, and as they have in previous years. Also in previous years, the Board of Selectmen has picked up the tab for the police details to help the families cross Route 140 to prevent any injuries. So, any questions on this?
Nope, I think it's a great event. It's been going on for several years now. It's been growing every year. It raises money for the Bloomer Girls, which is an organization in town that helps families in need. So I think it's great for us to help out and have a police detail to keep families safe.
Yeah, it's very well attended.
Yeah.
That's good for the kids.
I've actually never attended. It's never pulled it off with time. Do you remember what fund we used last year for this? Was it the Selectmen's?
I'm not sure.
That was the only thing I can remember.
Selectmen's fund?
No, it came out of one of the trust funds.
Right.
Got the trusts right here.
It would have been the one that, I'm not sure, the one that the Board of Selectmen's discretion.
Yes,
Okay, that'll be the William Knowlton.
yes.
Yes.
Do you want me to read off the account number?
No, you just said William Knowlton.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application for Michael Campbell and the Bloomer Girls for the Haunted Trail, and that is the date of October 27th and 28th. That we, of course, pick up the tab for the police details. Paid for,
Chief Bradley usually submits an invoice to me and we pay that.
okay, payable from the William Knowlton Trust Fund.
I second that.
Great, sure, that's a unanimous action by the board. Item 6.6, we are going to skip. We are going to discuss that in executive session because it has names of people in need. And then 6.7 is a discussion on marijuana bylaw. Last Tuesday, the Board of Selectmen hosted a public Q&A with our law firm for public's information regarding townwide marijuana bylaw. The meeting was attended by approximately 75 people, and tonight we're going to discuss the direction we want to give the town manager to head, so we have a warrant article for our special town meeting in November. So you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think the most important thing that came out of the meeting we had with KP in August and then the meeting in September, and that I want to reinforce for our folks that are listening and here, is that there are several different types of marijuana businesses, for lack of a better word, and one of them is retail sales, and there are other ones that include things like laboratories, manufacturing facilities, agricultural and growing facilities, distribution facilities, and all of those last four don't involve any kind of retail presence whatsoever. So it's a locked, secure, discrete building that doesn't have anything that would otherwise, looks like any other business, any other commercial business, not a retail business that's out there, whether it's in a metal building or what have you. So these aren't, those uses aren't pot shops. The issue is, and for me, is keeping those distinct from the retail pot shops or the retail sales shops. So when I think about opportunities for the town, knowing that there's been a huge amount, and you guys have heard this, right? One of the biggest things we hear about the tax base is we need to bring more businesses into town. Well, this is an opportunity to bring more businesses into town. So whatever you may think about marijuana, the businesses that don't sell the pot from a retail perspective are businesses that are legitimate legal businesses that can bring a tax base into town. There's not a lot of way to attract businesses new businesses to town. We're not going to get manufacturing jobs. Those things aren't coming back. We're not really a big biotech area. So, we have to think about what we can do to encourage businesses to come to town. So what I have been talking with folks about and recommend with some question is certainly putting non-retail marijuana shops in the commercial districts. I think is something that we would get wide support for at town meeting. Again, I don't know, but that's the sense based on who I talked to, so I want to hear from you guys as well. The other option would be to create an overlay. So for non-retail shops, an overlay zone, that would be some of the commercial areas and some general business areas. I mean, I don't think people want these kinds of facilities in, downtown or West Upton Center or what have you. So I don't know if we could work with the planning board to create, or zoning board to create an overlay district, but I would say either keeping it restricted to the commercial zones and or doing an overlay into the general business zones for all non-retail uses is pretty easy. The one I think we really have to think about is the retail and whether we allow retail in the commercial districts or not. I don't think we allow them in general business, but that's just my opinion.
So just to kind of piggyback on what Brett was saying, we both attended the meeting. Steve showed up a few minutes late. What I've gotten from the community is they're for anything but retail. The only thing I'm personally want more of an overlay because some of the commercial area is really close to residential, especially like on William Street and stuff. So I'd rather see an overlay district further down 140 in like the Walker Drive area.
Right. I mean, I think it's important. I think that distinction, I'm hearing really the only thing that's in question. I think people seem to be against all of it, with the exception of, we brought up the topic regarding laboratories. So that laboratory testing, and I'm not getting a lot of positive. I wouldn't say it's overwhelming, but again, I would echo your sentiments. It's it's very important for us to try to help bolster our commercial base. We're 3% commercial, business and commercial in town. So I guess the question is, how do people feel about that laboratory? And there's no guarantee that we would do.
And just so other people know, we can also negotiate host community agreements, so we could actually get more money than a normal tax rate, 3% tax. So we could get more money annually that we could earmark for, more road stuff, or you could put it towards
capital
or you're gonna need a new library someday. You're gonna need a new DPW. This is stuff that if you fund it right, could actually pay the bill. So we need to give the town manager direction tonight of what kind of warrant articles we want drawn up.
Right.
So,
I think
why don't we discuss it a little bit more if people don't mind? Because I think we're saying the same thing, which is the overlay, right? So look, we can just agree that we would recommend doing an overlay that includes some commercial, some general business. Obviously, keep all of the zone away from residential. We'll have to decide what that distance is. Is it a quarter mile? Is it 500 feet? Is it 1,000 feet? So think about that, because we should make that recommendation in the next 3 minutes.
The state has that proposed bylaw, or I think it's part of their legislation, 500 feet, which is actually, I thought, a very short buffer. That's not a lot of space, 500 feet.
Yeah.
But again,
Right.
that's a state guideline.
Right, you can't make it more, I think you can't make it more, that's for schools, you can't make it more than 500 feet from schools. But I don't think there's any guidelines in terms of where you put the line from residential properties or what have you, so we can do whatever we want. The challenge is that even in our, we have residential properties in our commercial districts. So we have residential properties in our general business districts. So at some point, you have to find that balance of making the town open to businesses actually coming in here, right? Like, if we just did it in the commercial zones, for example, we wouldn't have any real available and developable land and or facilities for example, the lab company that's approached the board and that asked us to sign that letter. If they don't have any place to go, for all intents and purposes, if we allow it in commercial zones, we're saying you can't come here because there's no practical reality to them coming, versus if you open it up to some certain general business areas that have actual buildings in them that somebody could sell to transfer or make some money on it, to sell the property to one of these businesses. it becomes a little more realistic. So
Right.
I think recommending an overlay, and then we can work out the distance from the residential districts. I don't think we can make it so that there's no residences that are still in the overlay. So I think we just have to work with, planning and zoning on that, but I don't know what you guys think.
Does that give you enough information to start developing a warrant that excludes retail and overlay? I mean, how deep do you need that? Or do you need us to figure out the buffers?
Well, I think it would be good to have a guideline as to what you're thinking as far as the distance from, like I'm thinking of the CNI district down in 140 South, that's a large geographic area as far as acreage, and there's not a lot of residential, so, but there is residential across the street in certain parts of the CNI district, so the question is really how far away would you want that overlay district to be from existing residential?
And I
General
guess
business is tough, and this is general business district across the street, and we know we have residential in the general business.
Yeah, I definitely, and that's why I said the overlay, because I definitely think that we would want to keep it out of the downtown areas. And I think the question is, so there's two questions I have. One is around retail, because I think if we're going to prohibit all retail in all parts of the town, that we might not get that to pass at town meeting because 52% of the town voted to make recreational pot legal. Maybe we could argue that, most of them don't actually want it in the town, which, great if we can get 2/3 vote, but I'm not sure we get 2/3 vote to prohibit retail shops from coming to town. We also have to do a ballot question in addition to passing 2/3 town meeting. So if we were going to restrict retail sales in town, not only do we have to get 2/3 vote at town meeting, we have to get a majority of vote at the ballot. And so I think that that's even less likely to happen than a 2/3 at town meeting. So I think it's going to be a pretty high hurdle for us to completely restrict retail shops in town. So I think what we could do is allow retail, create an overlay district for retail shops, which is, up off of 140, fairly prohibitive, but if it had to be done, it was up in the top of our commercial district. If we do all non-retail shops and we do the overlay, then I think that's fine. I just think we're going to be, I know you don't want retail, but the fact of the matter is, it's the law. So,
But I don't know if you need a vote do you need a vote for
you,
retail?
if you prohibit any one of these types of industries, you have to go to the ballot question.
It's required by law.
So do we
See,
do
I
a
think
menu?
the retail-
Do we do a menu thing? The menu option? Give the voters multiple choices that night on the floor?
I think after the planning board meeting, that was the consensus, is we would craft a couple of different warrant articles, and if the first one, fails, we could, let's just say,
Yeah.
I tend to think that retail sales, that would pass in town. I think people do not want retail sales. So I'm sorry, the prohibition
No, that's
of
fine.
retail
Yeah,
marijuana sales in town, I
Yeah.
personally think that would pass. I think
Okay.
people do not want that in town. Although you're right, it was very close at the state level when we had our ballot question. I think it's those other portions of the law
Yeah.
regarding different, the medical side, the transportation side, the testing side, that is gonna be, tough. I don't think that we'll get all portions of it, to prohibit all portions of it.
Yeah, what if we did the menu option, sort of did one that was all non-retail with the overlay? So, most of the commercial districts, some of the general business district with some sort of buffer to concentrations of retail homes. And so that was there was an option that was that and no retail sales is option A. And then
To ban everything.
yeah, one option to ban everything as an option if we want. I don't support that because I don't think that that's realistic. But we're gonna ban, one option to ban everything, so let's let the voters vote. So an option to ban everything, an option that does an overlay with no retail, an option that does the overlay with retail, but the retail in a much more constrained area than the overlay for the non-retail shops. So then there's, 3 options, and I think that's what we've heard is let's give the people the chance to vote, let's hear their voice, and we've heard from whether it's Chief Bradley, Chief DeFranzo, DPW, I mean, everybody that's involved with maintaining facilities, the extra infrastructure and all that's involved, you know, let's get their opinions. We've gotten their opinions. I think that we want to honor all that.
Probably Board of Health, I'm not sure if we've
Board of
got
Health, other
any
boards and
feedback from the
committees.
Board of Health on this?
Yeah.
Nothing as of yet.
Okay.
Does that make,
And I would
does that
add
make
as a
sense?
fourth option, a moratorium. If all of these fail, the last option
yes.
is to do the moratorium.
And write another 6 months on the moratorium, right? Because if none of these pass, then we've got to go back to the drawing board.
Have you heard
So
any?
total ban's the easy one.
Yep, that's easy.
The
The
overlay.
moratorium's easy.
Right, so we've got 2 out of 4 so far. The overlay with no retail, what are our restrictions on that? C&I district?
I think C&I plus some general business based on looking at the zoning map and figuring out what general business areas make sense. Maybe we could work with the Economic Development Committee and say, hey, here's a zoning map, here's C&I, where are the general business areas that would make sense from an economic development perspective, but also knowing that if we want to do it, we've got to be clear to the townspeople how we've rationalized what the overlay district is.
I mean, if you take the center of town and West Upton out of the
Take them out,
equation,
Right.
so now
Minimally,
you're really
exactly.
not talking about a lot of areas.
Exactly.
So it's a lot easier to kind of talk about the good area that you're actually trying to promote versus
Yeah.
all this other area you're taking
I think the
out of
only
play.
other general business district I can think of is on 140 South.
Right up by the Grafton side.
That would be 140
I
north.
was up there on 140 South towards Milford.
There's general business up there. Isn't there general business up 140 going toward Grafton?
Yes.
Is there? Okay, it must be
A lot of
past
it's-
West Upton.
It's by Rose's Antiques.
Right, where Rose's
There's a
Antiques
lot of
shop
shops
is.
up there, but that is general business.
Yeah,
So
so
those would be
that's
the
what
two
I,
opposite.
that's what I was thinking. So sort of 140 up by Milford, the general business of 140 up by Grafton, the general business up by 140 near
Yeah.
Milford, and CNI up in Milford.
I think that's, yeah.
And maybe,
Can I just make a notation, the one up by the Grafton side of 140, that's a lot of housing up there, a lot of residential.
yeah, that's, I mean, so we have to look at that. So I think work with the Economic Development Committee, as long as we're aware of where those places are, work with the Economic Development Committee, and then, you know, I mean, at some point, we have to draw the lines. I mean, literally, right? We have to go to the map, we have to draw the line.
Right.
So we haven't, I mean, I think you know the spirit and the intent of what we're after.
Right.
So use your discretion
So-
with the Economic Development Committee, and then
Yeah,
we'll,
just so you know, I plan on having the Economic Development Committee at our next meeting.
perfect.
So
Right.
this gives you something to start with. We'll
I was
have-
gonna
Yeah.
say, maybe we draft it and then
Yeah.
have them review it.
And then I'm not sure where the planning board input would come into.
We'll get their input as well. I mean, they kind of punted to us to take the lead on it, so, which is fine.
So the planning board must hold their public hearing by October 23rd.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to do a timeline on this. Because I'm thinking in my head that we could prepare a couple of draft articles potentially, we can get KP to help us, by our October 2nd. Doesn't give us a lot of time, gives us all of a week
Yeah,
to pull this together.
yeah.
But maybe we could have agreed upon the concepts, maybe that's what I'm thinking, agreed upon the concepts by October 2nd
Yeah.
at this meeting with the Economic Development Committee. And then October 9th, the planning board would meet, and then they could deliberate. And then that would give them 2 weeks. Yeah, that'd give them 2 weeks to then pull together a public hearing.
You good with that, Fred?
Mm-hmm.
And if you need us to stop in individually next
Yeah.
week, just let us know.
Yeah, because by the second, you could work on all the language. You don't have to have the final maps drawn. You can just have all the language written, and then we can finalize the maps.
Right, so, right, so my hope would be by, when we come back in this room on October 2nd, we'll have a good sense of the maps, what it looks like, what's being proposed. You can agree upon it, and then we can move this to the planning board to go through the public hearing process.
And when's the Economic Development Committee meeting coming with us?
October 2nd.
Okay, so that's the second meeting. Okay, perfect. Okay. What do you
And
got?
that's the same day MPT Laboratories will be there as well.
Perfect.
Okay.
Big agenda.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
MPT Laboratories, do you want to just tell people what that is so that people that don't know?
Yeah, so we were approached about 6 weeks ago by a laboratory firm out of California that they're in the business of testing the quality and efficacy of marijuana, THC, and all its derivatives. So they have approached the town of Upton and the town of Holliston, I believe. They want to set up a business here in this area. And so they prefer Upton, at least that's what they had said to me. But they're under time constraints, and they'd like to at least execute a lease agreement so they can start moving forward with the state permitting process in early November. So we've asked them to come in so they can meet with the Board of Selectmen, and they can answer a number of questions that we may have for them as far as their business and what they're seeking to do. They've already offered a host agreement to the town. They project that they could be contributing up to $60,000 a year by year 3 if things go well in the host agreement.
You need a motion, or are you good with what we told you to do?
No, I think that's enough direction for now. I think I would need a motion at the October 2nd meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Excuse me, I have a question.
just introduce yourself.
I'm Bill Taylor on North Street. I was at the meeting, I appreciate you putting it together. I was a little unclear after the meeting whether or not the zoning bylaw would also need to address medical marijuana. Because you've talked mostly, at least the way I've understood it, about recreational marijuana. And there's a whole host of businesses related to medical marijuana, including the dispensary and also labs that test medical marijuana, which is different from a lab that tests recreational marijuana. So I just want to be sure that we end up addressing all of the different types of businesses that we need to.
I do believe we have a planning bylaw for medical marijuana already written, right?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Oh, there was a draft one that was already written, and that would go through a public hearing, and there were some mock-ups. So yeah, that's a good point. We can certainly visit that. I can say that we cannot prohibit medical marijuana at this time in Massachusetts. So, but we'll have to certainly consider that as part of our zoning change.
Yeah, and I think there's a way to just, I don't know, let's work with KP Law to figure it out and write the warrants, but I mean, I would think that for all intents and purposes, we would put them all in the same category. So we wouldn't regulate medical different, right, than we would regulate recreational, and sort of non-retail is non-retail, retail is retail. I don't care if it's a medical dispensary or a retail recreational shop. Sort of, we just treat them all the same. As long as we can do that from a legal perspective, then I think that's...
Just like a lab's a lab.
A lab's a lab's a lab. I mean, or
Right.
grow operation's a grow operation's a grow operation. I don't, medical or not medical, I think is a moot point at this point.
Regardless
Other
of
than
which they're
legally,
growing.
there may be some distinction that we need to capture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Good call.
So anything else on the marijuana?
Yeah, Ben?
So last meeting, we voted to have a open comment session. I forgot to put that on the agenda. That's my fault. Did I?
Oh, yeah, it's public comment. I know.
You
Look
typed
at
it
that.
too
Number
fast.
10, public comment.
Okay, well, does anybody like to get up and say
Can I
anything?
just say one thing
Yes,
before?
sir.
Kelly reminded me, so Kelly's been actually worked the weekend to try to develop a survey so that we could, at least, I know the board has been talking to folks on the community, and there was a lot of attention at the meeting a few weeks ago. So she's in the process of putting together a marijuana survey so we can get a better sense from the community as to what they think would be appropriate in here in Upton. So we hope to launch that survey within the next day or so.
Wow.
And so again, hope by October 2nd, we'll certainly have, we hope, some valuable input from the community as well. Yeah.
So I would just say, yeah, please spread the word. That survey is going to be up on the town website. Get people to sign it. Post on your Facebook groups and talk to your neighbors. Like, we want to get as much input as possible. You know, whatever we do has to get 2/3 approval at the town meeting, so it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of debate, so the more information we can get up front, the better position we're going to be to do what the people want, the majority of people want. So that's great. Thanks for setting that up. Cool.
Any new business for you?
Nope.
Any business for you?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna go back in order. So correspondence, we had one correspondent, and we handled that during our thing with the Recreation Commission. So look ahead topics. We've invited the Economic Development Committee to our next meeting. I don't know when it stopped, but Derek, remember the department heads used to give us like monthly reports or quarterly reports? We asked all the department heads to provide us a quarterly report.
Quarterly report?
For October 2nd. And then the other thing I want you guys to think about is Selectman Simons has brought forth some issues regarding solar fields. Today I went through the planning board's solar plan. I emailed you a copy. I was going to ask you if you want it printed out or emailed, but I think we should probably look at it and see if we should recommend any changes to you or the planning board.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there was a solar farm proposed up off of Westboro Road, up behind like Howarth and Francis Drive. And so the issue that I have isn't so much with the existing regulations or zoning bylaws, it's with our ability or our adherence to what those bylaws are. So I think it really comes down to just clarifying for the various boards and committees in town what exactly the bylaws are, what the use regulations are for different zones. I think that what's written is good, at least without going through it in detail. It's just a question of enforcing what's there. So that's my 2 cents.
And Mr. Taylor might have some input there.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah, so I helped draft the existing solar bylaw as part of my Green Communities activities, and we limited it specifically to the commercial and industrial zones and prohibited it from all of the other. Figuring that that was the most conservative approach to take for that purpose, and that if the community changed its mind over time, that we could expand that. You mentioned the Westboro site, that's agricultural residential. And I think there was a confusion over the ability to grant a use variance. So, yes, everybody should understand the authorities we have done that.
Exactly.
So even if there's not a problem with the bylaw, then maybe figure out a training program.
It's a training, and I mean, I think they know now, the groups involved know now, but I think.
Yeah, and, you know, that case in particular is going to be heard tomorrow evening at the ZBA. The ZBA now understands their authority, and tomorrow evening they will have to legally deny the use variance by the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any look-ahead topics for you, sir?
No.
Actually, let me stay on planning board for a
Sure.
minute there. There was something I talked to Derek earlier about this. We actually have a common driveway in town, new construction. It's actually proved to be quite problematic. So this is something, again, looking forward, and we're talking about planning board, we're talking about warrant articles. I'd like to see if maybe there's something we can do there. As far as looking forward, I just think in this day and age, common driveways, you know, I hate to say, but they're kind of a thing of the past, so I
Like the one
don't
up
think.
on 140 there on the left with the
Mendon Street.
excavator.
I know
Yeah, sorry.
There's one on
Mendon
Mendon.
Mr.
yeah.
Westgate brought one to
Oh, another one?
Derek's attention today, too.
It's the one off of Mendon Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, there's like 4
On Mendon
houses up
Street.
there where the construction equipment is still there.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
I think there was a
that's-
problem with
it's really
fire.
a
I think
mess.
there was an access issue where the driveway wasn't accessible in one direction. Fire truck couldn't turn in from one direction. So it has, you know, truck has to turn around at the Mendon line and come back to access it.
Yeah,
So-
I agree that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, there's something there we're gonna have to look into.
It's been there for like that for years, right?
Yes, it is, yeah.
The planning board is looking at it currently.
Okay. Yeah, so that may be something they can sponsor, bring an article forward to avoid that problem in the future.
Great. Now we'll go to public comment. Does anybody have anything they'd like to?
Whoever had the hand for?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve Rackington.
How you doing?
Whitney Lane. I sent the board a letter about Warren Street, and I would like you just to understand the concern that I have. When we renovated this building, the architect at the time, the police chief at the time, and the fire chief all agreed that Warren Street from Nelson down to 140 should be closed because it's a dangerous situation. You basically have a road going through a parking lot, and traffic coming off 140 doesn't slow down. And if you're backing out of the parking space, or you're trying to walk across the parking lot, it's a very dangerous situation. We presented this, the renovation committee, and Kelly can attest to this, we presented this to the selectmen at the time, and for whatever reason, they chose not to do anything about it. And I really am concerned that somebody is eventually going to get hurt there. And I would urge you to consider closing that short section of Warren Street from Nelson down to 140. The only downside that I could see to it is maybe there'd be a little bit more traffic going over to Church Street. And there is a daycare preschool on Church Street at the church. I'm sure we could come up with a way to limit traffic going through that street during the drop-off and pickup hours to make it safer for parents and children. But this is next door here. This is an accident just waiting to happen. And I would really urge you to consider taking some action on this if you could.
Thank you, sir. We'll put that on a future agenda item. Thank you.
I'm the chair of the Open Space Committee, and the Recreation Commission was kind enough to reach out to us to better integrate the passive recreation opportunities that we have with the active recreation opportunities that they have. And I'm very appreciative of that. I did want to mention, as a result, that the Recreation Commission is having a meeting on Thursday night where the consultant they hired is going to take feedback from the community about what they want in the recreation facilities, and they can also have questions answered about the facilities that we do have. So I just wanted to get up and encourage people to come to Nipmuc High School. It's in the cafeteria at 6:30 p.m. This Thursday.
Can you send it out on social media?
It's on the town website.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if they could tweet it out or wherever else they do. So, Mrs. Haggard, Lynn, do you have something?
Lynn Haggerty, Silent Lane, Upton. I just want to thank the Board of Selectmen and the town manager for your oversight of the Recreation Committee, as they don't fall under your purview, as I understand, and your assistance with all of that. I did send you letter and documentation, some consideration, what I passed over to you as far as review oversight. There's seems to be a consistency of not following procedures, laws, so forth, and there's longevity in it, and it needs to change, and I appreciate that you're working towards that. So I want to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Seeing no others, we're actually going to enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 214, Section 1B, and Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 26C, to discuss financial aid to a resident in need. From that meeting, we are going to adjourn directly from that meeting. We're not going to.
You make a motion, just motion.
Enter executive
I think
session.
we have to, Stephen Mattelli and I.
Gary Doherty, aye. Brett Simons, aye.